Just going to wait a minute while everyone joins. Can see the attendees ticking up. We'll be with you very shortly. Well, providing I've pressed all the right buttons, we're here and welcome. In fact, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's an absolute pleasure to have you all joining us today for the inaugural meeting of Greening of Streaming. It's an amazing turnout. The response on social has been humbling, to be honest, and I'm delighted that so many of you have engaged and shared the invites to this meeting. And that so many speakers have stepped forward to contribute their thoughts on this topic. So first, a few words of introduction to set the scene. My name is Dom Robinson, and I'm the founder of Greening of Streaming and one of your hosts for today. My day job is BizDev for Ideas. We develop software for streaming live through telco and CDN infrastructures. Ideas underpins the delivery of many hundreds of thousands of live events across CDNs and clouds to many millions of viewers, with a core focus on ultra-high availability when delivering live video services at scale. I also chair and program a biannual conference called the Content Delivery Summit and write for a magazine called Streaming Media, which is probably how many of you will know me. I consider myself to be one of the pioneers of the streaming sector. I started out with processing images over IP networks from telescopes in 1990 and began live webcasting in 1996 for clients including Fatboy Slim, Glastonbury, Sky Sports, BBC, BT, Parliament, and numerous heads of state. Then, between 2001 and 2009, I built one of the first European content delivery networks, focused on efficiency through the use of a dark art called IP multicast. Something that taught me early on that engineering efficiency, a central topic of today, is often pitted against dominant commercial forces. Inefficiency sometimes makes more money. While in 1996, my media server and portable encoder possibly comprised the entire UK streaming electricity demand, today, streaming forms one of, if not the dominant driver for almost all internet power demand worldwide. Quite how much this demand is a very moot point. As our keynote speaker today will highlight, measurement and language around these issues is at best nascent and at worst, wildly prone to greenwashing. Indeed, recent news highlighting the tens of thousands of GPUs that are consuming cities of energy for cryptocurrency mining is, somewhat ironically, being circulated around the world by hundreds of millions of GPUs that are encoding, transcoding, and decoding that very streaming news. And let us not forget that that news itself is being delivered to those GPUs by an equally incredible number of routers, servers, switches, and radio access networks, each of them consuming electricity too. These numbers are complex and can be wildly misconstrued, For example, mining happens 24/7, but viewing happens for minutes or hours a day, and yet delivery infrastructure is always on, waiting for that use. Additionally, streaming is a multi-tenant service. The ownership of the problem is constantly changing, and the language that we're using to describe the issue is, at best, ill-defined. In an industry that has, for its first decade, focused on price, and then for the recent decade, focused on performance, we must now take ownership of power as the key architectural design consideration. As an engineering community, if we take ownership in this way, we are likely to be able to directly affect change that can be measured in quantities of power stations. It is this aspiration, combined with a direct connection to those engineers who can affect that change, that forms the foundation of greening of streaming. GreeningofStreaming.org is named after an article I co-authored with a fellow streaming media writer, Tim Siglin, about 18 months ago for Streaming Media magazine. Tim is equally long in the tooth in the sector, and he and I collaborate on many projects. Tim, are you out there?
I am, Dom. Thanks for having me today.
Tell us a little bit about your motivations behind Greening of Streaming, and in particular, the Help Me Stream Research Foundation.
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you to you for leading the charge into what we thought at the point when we co-wrote the article might be a controversial stance, that power needed to have equal bearing with price and performance, forming what we call sort of the 3 Ps today. And also welcome to our audience members and panelists, each of you for coming to joining in today. We're ecstatic that you've chosen to join us on this inaugural kickoff meeting. So just a little bit about Help Me Stream. For those of you who may not know me, I've been involved in interactive video and video conferencing for over 3 decades. The last quarter century, I've focused almost exclusively on streaming and web-based delivery. I've had the honor to consult to or even act as interim chief technology officer or chief strategy officer roles for a number of you in either current or prior companies. And I've also had the honor to have several of you as panelists at either Streaming Media East, West, Europe, or the Content Delivery Summit. Those who know me know that attention to detail drives me, and it's not just technical details, but the broader implication of those technical changes. Whether it's been performing independent validation of claims made in the industry at the advent of DSP or GPU-related live encoding, deep dive analysis into questions around mobile video delivery, or researching the overall impact that traditional cable set-top boxes had on national power consumption here in the US, which incidentally led to the opportunity to draft recommendation for Department of Energy policy around the use of hard drives in cable set-top boxes. All the projects that I work on have the 3 Ps in mind as the bottom line. For me, over the last couple of years, and with the acknowledgement that the industry's fundamentally changed the way Western media consumption habits work, I've been shifting focus toward giving the gift of streaming to those in emerging economies who need it most. From that desire sprung the not-for-profit Help Me Stream Research Foundation, or HMSRF. We're a 501c3 that's focused on the reuse of older technologies, along with researching and designing innovative streaming solutions that can be put into the hands of NGOs and other educators who strive each day to deliver messages of health, physical or spiritual and mental well-being in some of the harshest environments on the planet. Led by our founding chairman, Eric Schumacher Rasmussen, Help Me Stream digs through older donated technologies, researching common threads that don't just pay lip service to the 3 Ps, but actually innovate beyond the original intent of the equipment. We're funded by donations, volunteering, volunteer engineering resources, and program services. So we offer program services, including independent validation of industry claims to test both on test benches and in real world scenarios. Part of our research, and this comes to sort of the greening of streaming part of our research involves looking beyond renewable power generation to what we're calling recyclable power, quite literally combining pedal power with streaming classroom in a box solutions that can be used in areas that have limited power and connectivity. whether it's in sub-Saharan Africa or in the mountains of Appalachia, the place that I currently choose to call home after having worked on 6 continents. If you're interested in helping to donate gear or time to help me stream, please talk to me separately. But speaking of Appalachia, the joint concern that Dom and I shared about fossil fuel and unmodified coal-fired power plants being used to power our industry to scale was a natural fit when Eric asked the two of us to co-author from both a UK and US perspective the Greening of Streaming article that started Dom and myself on the journey to move beyond words to action. From that process and feedback from those of you in the industry, the Greening of Streaming organization was born. It's a critical partner to what we do at Help Me Stream. And the common thread between the two of them is that we're looking to simultaneously grow the streaming industry's innovation for at-scale delivery while also reducing power consumption. When it comes to engaging all of you in solving the balance of the 3 Ps as an industry before regulation is forced on us, I personally would like to thank all of you for heeding the call to be with us today to turn this vision into reality. Dom, back to you for today's agenda.
Okay, so we are going to cover an awful lot of ground in the next 2 hours. There'll be one more key welcome in a moment, and then we're going to move on to the keynote for about 15 minutes. We're going to have about 5–10 minute presentation and then a bit of a chat with our keynote speaker, who I'm going to introduce more fully at the time. Then we have 2 anchor presentations from 2 of the most significant technology vendors in the streaming sector, both Akamai and Intel. Both companies have not only been interested in greening of streaming from the first engagement, but have brought an enthusiasm and support that has undeniably been a key motivator for us in bringing this all together. They have literally been standing in queue to become founder members since we outlined the idea, and I cannot thank them enough for bringing their real-world at-scale insight today. These anchor presentations went in the diary early and helped us enormously in seeding the event. The second hour of the agenda was, when we conceived the event, a bit of an unknown. We didn't know which organisations would be motivated to take part, nor did we know what format that would end up in. Having a panel with one guy from a data centre was never really going to engage everyone. So we put out a call for presentations and thought, if we get some time left over, we can fill it with a panel discussion or something. Well, little did we expect to have 8 companies step forward in next to no time, and each with an extremely interesting contribution. So we decided to challenge them all to try to present for just 5 minutes to help us all at this initial stage raise the range of issues that streaming organizations are addressing and to simply open the door to their thinking. So, assuming we run to time, and I can be quite forceful at times, I have a bell, we will all have an opportunity to hear from two peer industry associations about how industry groups can bring stakeholders together to effect change, and they'll talk about their sustainability focused activities. We're keen to deduplicate efforts across the sector and foster this collaboration between our organizations. As I keep saying, with sustainability issues, we only win if we all win. So, with all the background done, there is just one last key formality to do. As you can see, Tim and I are very busy, and neither of us could do Greening of Streaming the justice it requires without dropping our other livelihood to focus on it full time. My company, Ideas, has helped us to bootstrap things by allowing me to hire Adam Curwin to run things full time. I've actually known Adam since I was 9 years old, and he has, as they say in the Monty Python sketch, become a very clever boy. Having a zoology degree and experience in a recycling venture, when he launched straight from university, Adam went on to become an accountant and has as much experience as a finance director as I have in streaming. He not only has the right skills, but he also ran the UK Green Energy division for global energy provider EDF. So I would, at this point, like to welcome him as the Executive Director of Greening of Streaming to step forward to talk just for a moment about the purpose of today, which is to recruit you as founder members of Greening of Streaming. Adam, are you out there?
Hi, everybody. Thanks very much for that warm welcome, Dom and Tim. And in turn, I'd like to thank everyone here for attending. As Dom said, he and I have known each other for years. I graduated with a degree in zoology, having studied much environmental science and ecology and conservation as part of it. I subsequently qualified as an accountant and have spent my career in industry rather than practice, so I understand that any decisions made within greening of streaming have a real business and financial impact when implemented. Going forwards, I will be your contact for greening of streaming. Dom and Tim have run with an incredible idea to bring it to this point, but it is now important for it to be its own entity. Tim and Dom are busy with their day-to-day businesses, but there is so much for greening of streaming to do that it needs its own structure. It is also important that you, as members, know that greening of streaming is autonomous and completely independent of ideas and HMSRF. To that end, it has been set up as a separate company and legal entity. Greening of streaming has been created to address the growing concern of the huge power demands that streaming is placing on the planet. The last year has provided a step change in how the world is consuming streaming. We have embraced it as our entertainment to download content. We've used it to stay in touch with friends and family in a difficult period. The world of business has been transformed forever with the increased emphasis on working from home, and we know that this will not go back to how it was before the pandemic. Excuse me. However, this increased use leads to increased demands. We have to caveat what we do. Yes, we have saved energy in the travel to office, but there is still an energy requirement to the streaming replacement. Also, in the last few months, the media has highlighted the power demands of cryptocurrency mining. For the majority of the public, this is an abstract idea. Mostly, cryptocurrency mining is not something they are directly involved in. And in most cases, they picture banks of servers in China or Russia, possibly even criminal enterprise. However, it is only a matter of time until they start looking at their own consumption of streaming. This is where greening of streaming comes in. Today's event is to enthuse you to sign up as founder members for our inaugural meeting in October. Greening of streaming will actively promote what the industry is doing ourselves to address the issues. Members will be invited to raise and discuss issues that they have discovered and how they have resolved them. They are invited to share best practice and ask others to engage. Greening of streaming must not be afraid to ask members to reflect on their own processes and ask how they continuously improve. Members are asked to engage in the goals of greening of streaming. Signing up cannot be seen as absolving you of responsibility and simply greenwashing the problem away. It will effectively be a member-led organisation. We will ask members to elect a steering committee to be in place for a year at a time to decide on work to be undertaken and help drive the change. Each in turn will be asked to provide a voluntary update at the monthly or quarterly meeting, to be decided which, about the changes that we have made and suggestions for the group. Greening of Streaming plans to commission a review of the state of the industry and try and find out definitively what impact streaming is having on the planet. Ideally, this can be followed up as funds allow to understand the changes that our decisions as a group are having to reduce this impact. Once we've agreed the initial scope in our October meeting, we will be undertaking a formal launch in the UK Houses of Parliament in December. We will be inviting some UK politicians and journalists to publicly promote our mission and raise awareness of what we are about. We would welcome members to attend either in person or online to this exciting event. I might have plenty of experience with business, finance, and environmental science, but I am a relative newcomer to the streaming industry, and I look forward to working with you all and learning about it. Hopefully my layperson approach may enable us to make the message clearer for the public at large to understand. I hope that this has whet your appetite for what we are about, and I'll pass you back to Dom now to introduce our first speaker and get the afternoon underway. Thank you very much.
Okay, Adam, thank you very much for that. And I hope that makes it clear what we're up to today. So that sort of is our formal welcome and opening notes. Just a few procedural things. The Q&A is open, the chat room is open in Zoom, so please throw ideas and discussion into there. What we're really trying to do, alongside inviting you to join, is to find out what are the central issues where we converge the central tenets of greening and streaming. So get active in the chat room, get active in the Q&A. If there is time, we will put some questions to speakers as they come forward. And so on, and obviously Tim and I and Adam will do a bit of a tap dance to fill any gaps in timing as we go through. But at this point, I want to ask Dan Schien forward. So when I was bringing the idea together, I was talking to George Camia at the IEA about the idea of greening of streaming and about who might help us from an academic point of view, understand the central language and issues in ICT and sustainability. And it's a minefield. And George pointed me at Dan and gave him a great strong recommendation as somebody who would be a great keynote opening speaker to start proceedings. And I think it's important that we do, as a community, find common language and measurement. So I think at this point, let's get those presentations underway. Dan, are you out there? Can you bring your presentation up? We've got some speaker notes at the moment.
Okay, great. we just tried this, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
I thought I did exactly as we had rehearsed it.
That's okay.
Hang on, I'll just swap this around.
While you're doing that, I'm just going to answer a question Gus has asked in the chat room about membership. The membership prices are up on the website. Adam at greeningofstreaming.org, who you obviously just saw speaking, is the point of contact to talk to. I think we're just waiting for that registration to arrive so that we can actually get the memberships underway and so on.
Super. Where do I need to go? Swap display. So let's try this again. How about now?
There we go. That's the one. We're on your second slide.
Fantastic. Okay, great.
Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dom and Adam and everyone for attending. It's a big honor to give a keynote. This is I'm an academic. You are professionals. You know so much more about this than I do. So I'm very humbled. I don't want to pretend that I'm an expert on streaming media. I do know a bit about the environmental impact of digital services, and one of the big things that many stakeholders are interested in is the environmental impact of streaming video in particular, and that is what that's probably why I'm here today, to provide you with that perspective from our academic research. What do we know? The work that I present has developed over the last decade and a bit. I did a PhD at the University of Bristol. I'm originally German. My PhD supervisor is now my best colleague, Chris Priest. We work together at the University of Bristol with a team. And we have worked with the BBC and the Guardian and many other organizations now that I'll mention in a few moments. And we as researchers, we ask research questions. We want to our mission in life or in society is to look at the things that other parts of the economy, that other players of the economy, is it politicians or industry or consumers or other individuals, don't have the capacity or the interest asking. And some questions that we had, we as computer scientists with a sustainability interest, was the question of what is the environmental footprint of ICT, of the things that we are teaching how to construct those services, and of the things that we consume ourselves. What is their environmental impact? That's what we started investigating in 2011. The first project was with the Guardian. They were in a moment of transformation from print to digital, and they wanted to understand what the impact of the transformation is. And the methods weren't there. The LCA, the life cycle assessment method, I'll mention that in a moment again, was there for tangible objects, for paper, but not for the digital. So we, as computer scientists, came in and we started developing a body of methods. And then the next question is, besides understanding what is that impact, what can we do to reduce it? These were the research questions, the main high-level research questions that have always driven our work. Now, I put those into brackets because they have moved away from research, and they're now in the hands and interest of many, including probably many of you. And I want everyone to engage on those questions, and hopefully we make progress on answering these. And so I will talk a little bit about the first question initially. What is the current environmental footprint of streaming, of ICT in general as well? And I'll talk about methods and some tools, and data that is necessary. And then I also talk a little bit about what we have done at the university that can be done to reduce that impact. So for context, you will be aware of some of those numbers. I have fished out the most recent study that I think is important to look at, come from Lancaster. Our good colleagues there, Freitag et al., have just put a new paper up on ArchiveX titled "The Climate Impact of ICT: A Review of Estimates, Trends and Regulations," and there they are they're reviewing the existing body of assessments, and they're estimating that the carbon emissions of ICT from the use phase are in the order of 2 to 4%, and that is roughly similar to the aviation sector. The big difference between those two sectors is that aviation is only used for flying, is only a very small number of individuals in the developed world are flying, whereas ICT is used globally. So it's a much more egalitarian way to emit carbon. It's also a relatively small portion of carbon emissions on a global scale. It's still definitely worth considering, in particular as our use of ICT continues to grow. You just mentioned the pandemic, and we know other parts of the economy need to decarbonize. So this portion of the overall is likely to grow. But at the same time, this gives us confidence that we are not that the ICT sector isn't burning the planet immediately, and something that is that we need to be extremely guilty of using, especially for consumers. I think that's an important message that we give out often. But I'll come to more results in a moment. In terms of methods, what I don't have time to go into the details of how these how these methods are working, but I want to mention to you that life cycle assessment is the most important body of methods that we apply in our work. Many sustainability practitioners that I know some of you are here in the call, they will know these. They will also know the greenhouse protocol. In a nutshell, the life cycle assessment body of methods is standardized by the ISO, describes a sequence of steps that practitioners should go through when an assessment is carried out, such that variability and chance is reduced, of course. Standardizing something so that then the resulting assessments are most comparable, and they're also systematic enough that they are complete and not accidentally we're forgetting to include important parts. And then in addition, what may be important to mention here is a set of scopes associated to when emissions are being taken into account in an assessment. Again, apologies if you are aware of this terminology, but there are importantly 3 scopes that an organization needs to take into account when reporting emissions. The first one are direct emissions. These come from the combustion of fossil fuels within an organization. So in the ICT sector, this is often chemicals used for the manufacturing of devices, or the combustion of diesel for power generation. The second important scope is scope 2, and this refers to emissions from purchased electricity, and the third scope are up and downstream emissions across the supply chain. So this could be emissions that occur when materials are being when bought materials are manufactured, or if or emissions that occur when your customers are consuming your services. And I'll come back to this element of supply chains in a moment. Now, the next slide here describes or illustrates the ecosystem that we are studying. We are taking account of the energy consumption in data centers, in servers and networks. We are looking at wired networks and cellular networks outside of the servers, so the internet network, and then user devices in the homes. Very high level. This is in line with this life cycle assessment approach, where we want to take a comprehensive perspective so that we aren't missing parts of the system and potentially contributing to burden shifting. If we are ignoring a part of the system in our assessment, which might stimulate moving emissions to it, then we would set perverse incentives. So we want to have this end-to-end perspective when assessing. Sadly, this is probably rather small. I have taken here, I've reproduced here a system diagram of YouTube that comes from a paper that we have published in 2016 at the International Conference for Human-Computer Interaction. And in this paper, we carry out an assessment of YouTube, of the carbon emissions from the use of YouTube for their audience. And I will just quickly walk you through those components. They're in principle exactly the same that you've just seen in those burgundy boxes. It starts with a data center at the top that is connected to networks, and on this finer level here, we see that we are distinguishing between core networks and then edge networks, where we have got CDN servers hosted, and for many of you, this is probably where your day-to-day business is, and then from those CDN servers, content is distributed over access networks. So we take those into account, various wired access networks and cell networks, and then we consider a broad portfolio of different user devices where these services are consumed. And one more slide to show you the degree of detail that these assessments can go into. This is a diagram taken from a journal paper that came out just this last week, and I will. There's a reference to it coming up in a moment. In which we have carried out an assessment of the carbon emissions associated to the BBC's delivery of video services across the different platforms. So not just IP-based delivery, but also satellite and terrestrial broadcast. But you can see there's an increasing number of boxes, and there's already much simplification in there. But all of these processes, they need to be taken into account in order to understand this end-to-end footprint. Okay, I assume if the font size is big enough, you will be familiar with many of those, especially when it comes to distribution via CDN infrastructures. Okay. So this, as context, how those assessments are carried out. Now I'll go into some results that will maybe serve to give a sense of perspective of that we are having as researchers at the moment of where the impact of streaming is located. So this is here's this link to this recent journal publication. The data that you're seeing here is from 2016. That's an important caveat. It took a bit of time to publish it, sadly. Now, this is specific to streaming of video, of course. We, as researchers, we want to understand the energy consumption associated to other types of activities that are carried out on CDN infrastructures. But when and it would be fantastic understanding, corroborating those results with other services. But for the BBC, this is based on primary data. It turns out that the system processes that are outside of the home are contributing to a much smaller degree to the overall footprint than what's happening inside of the homes. Yeah, so by and we can go into some detail why the network customer premise equipment, that's the very top here, is so much higher than the viewing devices. This is associated to a process, a methodological nuance called allocation, as part of the life cycle assessment. But the point remains that the equipment that is operating inside of the home contributes to a much greater degree to the energy consumption than the equipment outside of the home. And this is this specific chart is from 2016, as I said before, and now since then there have been certain trends, in particular to when it comes to what type of devices are used to consume streamed content. So some changes here. Also, there have been methodological advances to that will affect those proportions, but the general fact that the shared infrastructure outside of the home is contributing to a smaller degree to the overall footprint, that's still the case. And I have a more recent result here. This is from a study carried out by the Carbon Trust this year. They released this in May this year. It's titled "The Carbon Impact of Video Streaming." Sadly, the link to the text hasn't carried over in the PowerPoint. I will put that into the chat in a moment, unless someone else beats me to it. This assessment here is based on more recent data, yeah, 2020, and here we can see the same. We see the same overall sort of architecture of the footprint on the bar chart on the right here. We see that the viewing device, which represents a mix of different viewing devices for a service, so taking into account a weighted average across TVs and phones and laptops, still is the dominant portion of the overall footprint, followed by the home router. And then follows network transmission and data center activities. So this corroborates the results that we have come to arrive at in our study with the BBC. Okay, and I'm happy to go into this in a moment. Now, these are some results that maybe give some perspective on what is the impact of streaming. Oh, and maybe it's worth pointing out here the total magnitude. The most recent study here from the Carbon Trust estimates that the footprint is for this mix of different devices 55 gram of CO2 equivalent per hour. Now, just as in proportion, you might be aware your car is going to consume a lot more if you drive it for an hour. So in case just to put it in perspective, the European fleet average carbon emissions at the moment is around 160 gram CO2 per kilometer, and so that is you can drive a lot more in an hour. In fact, there are probably very few activities in the home that you can undertake that are more carbon emission that are more carbon efficient than watching television. That is. But you will the fact is, if you're telling people stop streaming because it's so bad, you always need to ask, what are people doing instead? Okay. Then so the next question was, now we have some perspective on what is the impact of streaming. Then we need to understand, how can we make those results more robust? How can we scale them up? So I showed you in the beginning that there was the study from Freitag et al. That tried to estimate the ICT's emissions on a global scale. There's a lot of uncertainty in here, and the reason why this uncertainty is still there, while we're still battling with this, is that these digital services are provided across supply chains, and the methods to carry out these assessments, they need to sometimes make modeling assumptions for system parts that are outside of the control of an individual organization. I'll explain to that. I'll explain that in a moment again. An important mechanism that will result in greater transparency, hopefully, as a driver for these emissions and carbon impacts to be reported, is the Science-Based Target Initiative, which more and more organizations are trying to adopt. But the sustainability professionals working within those organizations, they are experts for LCA methodology. They are experts for applying those to material parts of the organization, so bricks and mortar. But the digital services are extremely complex, and the set of methods required to assess them is still developing. So we have worked with those sustainability practitioners within digital media organizations in order to enable them to assess the footprint of the services that these organizations provide, and the outcome of this, after a decade of research of developing those methods, has been a tool that we have published. It's led by an environmental consultancy in London, and we have had an immense success with the video streaming providers that you see here, and publishing service providers and advertisement organizations picking up this tool and working with it, and hopefully increasing transparency on the impact of those digital services. And the Carbon Trust white paper is one of the projects that have already benefited from the DIMPACT system and the methods that are embedded in there. So I mentioned before that among the research questions that we have is we want to understand what is the impact of ICT in general, of streaming as one example. We are also interested in AI and blockchain and all of these other systems, but streaming has been at the forefront of our minds. And the next question is, what can we do to reduce that impact? And of course, you've already mentioned decarbonizing the electricity that we consume. That is an absolute given. We should all, within homes and outside, consume electricity from renewable sources. The next thing that needs to happen is we need to provide those services more efficiently. And I am probably the last person to tell you how to do this. You as the professionals working in those organizations, you're always already striving to save electricity consumption. But we, through this end-to-end perspective, I think we at the university, we have a role, a contribution that we can make, because we're naturally looking at the effects of efficiency improvements in one part on other parts. And related to this is greener design in a broader sense. And I'll just very quickly mention one example here, and that is coming back to this YouTube study that we carried out again in 2016, where we're looking into forms of digital waste. And digital waste refers specifically to the design of services that are more mindful of what users want to actually achieve, instead of using this term for inefficiency in general. We want to maybe inspire the community of practitioners that design these services to be more considerate of the effects of their design decisions on the infrastructure where the electricity is consumed. And in this study, we first, based on this diagram that we showed you and public data that YouTube has published, carried out this initial assessment where we get an understanding of where the footprint is located. Now you see the proportion of the footprint as it is distributed over the system parts is very different to what we've seen with the BBC, and that is the case because from what we know, YouTube is consumed to a much greater degree on mobile phones rather than televisions, and mobile phones are designed for efficiency right from the start, and so overall this audience use of mobile phones to consume YouTube will result in a relatively smaller footprint than here, the footprint from cellular networks. It turns out that cellular networks are relatively much more energy consuming than wired access networks, and overall, if we apply accounting methods, then a greater portion of the energy consumed by cellular networks would be allocated to YouTube. And then we were asking this design question. Now, if we want to eliminate digital waste, if we want to provide the service such that it is most valuable to the user, can we do something to the way that the service is designed that reduces the cost on energy consumption, the resource intensity? And the idea here was, based on an observation by our colleagues in Lancaster, that many users are only listening to YouTube, but they're not actually watching the videos that are displayed on the screen. If we were providing an alternative service of YouTube where you don't have to keep the screen on, we don't have to transfer the bits over the wire to the user, what would be the resulting reduction of resource use, of infrastructure use, and then energy consumption reduction from this intervention? And we're estimating that depending on what portion of the total amount of YouTube consumption you believe could be substituted in this way, up to 600,000 tons of carbon dioxide could be saved per year. Great. That is it for the moment. Hopefully some food for thought. I'm looking forward to conversations with many of you about this. I'm super interested in this. It's fantastic to be here. I can't cover all of it, but hopefully some of it was interesting.
Dan, I can't thank you enough. Absolutely awesome opener for Greening of Streaming. You've just touched on the enormity of the issues that I think we face as a sector, and judging by the chat room and the Q&A that's going on, I think we've already lit some touch paper, which is great. It's clearly a complex issue to measure, and ownership of the problem, if nothing else, is an attribution of energy utilization in these spaces is complex. So If you can, rather than ask you the questions that have come in on the Q&A, rather than put those to you on air and ask you to talk about them, just in order to try to keep to schedule, could you have a look in the Q&A box and get involved with the chat there and chat with the guys on air? And also, I would like to invite you back to help guide us and mentor us as we create working groups to look at some of these issues within the Greening of Streaming organization. I think your insight and experience would be invaluable. So if I could, I'd ask everyone to give us a round of applause. Tim, could you perhaps just unmute your mic and clap for me, just so that we can see someone clapping?
Daniel, I have so many questions off of research that I've done that I'm very glad you came and did this, like Dom said. But I want to make sure that we correlate all these, because as we talk about the lexicon, some of the terminology you're giving us is new to those of us who aren't sustainability managers. And I think it's key for us to pick up on those and make sure that we carry that forward with the language that we use. So thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Dan.
Hopefully it was useful. I'll have a
It
look
was
into the
absolutely
chat
awesome.
and respond there.
Just something I probably haven't mentioned, at the end of hour 2, I'm going to try to go into more of an informal, we'll stop the recording, we'll turn cameras on, and we'll try and have a chat. So those of you who do want to chat with Dan, if you can stick around, Dan, it'd be great. Or if you've got things to do, if you could pop back a little, that would be cool. But he's going to stay involved with Greening of Streaming somehow, so we will be able to get you in touch if you have burning questions. Now, we need to step on and get into the key industry presentations. Now, one party has been extremely supportive in the foundation of Greening of Streaming, and that's been Akamai. Since Content Delivery Summit, when we asked if they would come forward and talk about their sustainability strategy, they were enthused by the idea and have been absolutely supportive. I can't thank both Vinay and Mike anymore. And rather than gush and look a bit creepy, I'm actually just going to ask them to come to the virtual stage and ask one of the largest CDNs there is to talk about the challenges you've faced and how you've been facing them. So, Mike, please take the floor.
Hey, thanks, Tom. Thanks for that warm introduction. Let me just share my screen here. Great. So I'll just do a quick introduction here. Thanks for having us. Mike Matera, Director of Corporate Sustainability over at Akamai. I'm here with my colleague, Vinay Kanakar. He's our CTO of Global Carrier Strategy. Very happy to be here today to kick this wonderful initiative off, and I will pass it off to Vinay to get things started. Vinay? I think you're on mute. There you go.
Yep, I was. No, I had to find the mouse cursor actually to hit the unmute button. It was on another screen. Anyway, my name is Vinay Kanekar. Thank you, Mike, for sort of teeing it up for me. Thank you, Dom, Tim, for organizing this event. I think we've all looked at this from a performance and scale perspective for a very long time. And I think it's timely, maybe we could have even done it earlier, but certainly important to start now that we look at it from a sustainability perspective. And in the Greening of Streaming, I think it's just a really cool name. But so let me talk about Akamai itself. So I run the product and platform architecture team at Akamai, and we look greatly at how we can continue to scale in the various dimensions that our customers need. I mean, in the various dimensions that the internet itself is scaling. And I'm not sure how many people here are familiar with Akamai, but so, we're one of the old time CDNs. Akamai was founded in 1998. I started there in 99, which was a tiny little startup. And generally speaking, our intention was driven. So we said the best way to deliver content is to bring it as close to the consumers as possible. And so we've gone out and we've deployed our platform across the world in more than 1,400 networks. And And usually our servers are in that ISP's network itself, many times in many locations in that network. And we work with the ISP a lot on how we map traffic within their network, how we optimize so that their own network is more efficient, that they save on transit costs and other things. So that's generally been our philosophy all along. And along the way, what we realized is that content delivery was one aspect of how you do things on the internet, but the last few years have had us make a major shift towards being more secure, being more protective of customer information, customer data, being able to understand better when information's being stolen, exfiltrated, things like that. So we started as a CDN. We're now a much broader company, especially from the security perspective. But in this context, really, it's the CDN side that dominates today. I think the future will be different, but today we see about 150 terabits of traffic per second at peak, and this is just the global peak. If you try to add up individual peaks across the world, it's a much larger number. And so we look at volumes like these. We look at the amount of data that we are getting, and we don't see any real slowdown in the adoption of the internet. I think everyone here will have seen that from their own perspectives, but where the internet started out as a best effort sort of infrastructure, it has now become essentially indispensable. So a lot of us depend on the internet for everything we do, especially during the last year and a half, where a lot of our work has been remote. This conference itself is running off of the internet, and our expectations of that quality have increased significantly. And if as we go to the next slide, what we see is that our peaks and our customers' expectations of future peaks are only getting bigger. So we had a peak of about 200 terabits a few months ago, I think in March, and what we realize is that the peak of a few months ago starts to become sort of the daily peak 8 months down the road. So, where we first, when we first saw 200 terabits, or when we first saw 150 terabits back in December, by now, every day is 150 terabits, 160 terabits of traffic, and measured globally. And we continue to see that growth expand. Not only in terms of bandwidth, but also in terms of compute. So more and more customers are looking to put their compute closer to users, closer to their customers. And so that's a different direction in which we see our resource need growing, our power consumption growing, and of course, the opportunities for optimization and increasing efficiency just keep getting broader and broader. There's a big space on the security side where applications like bot management or malicious bot detection, web application firewalls, these can be very compute intensive as well. And often these are applied to streaming media as a protection layer. So there's a lot of optimization there that we see working on in the next few years. But just from a global perspective, as you'll see on the next slide, we deliver content today across the world. So from a areas of interest perspective, the countries that we care about are the countries where we deliver bits into or traffic into, and the countries where we deploy our own infrastructure. From the former perspective, it's a matter of whether we can deliver the right kind of performance and reliability for the consumers in those geographies. But from the server side, a big part of it is how efficient are our servers in those countries? How well are we sourcing the power that we are using? how are we working with the local markets to be more efficient in terms of, the power loss within data centers, even just how we can help them optimize how the infrastructure is powered and cooled, whether we bring in our own equipment to make that sort of a better outcome for both of us. So there are many areas in which we look at optimization, and as Director of Sustainability, Mike has been leading the charge in Akamai for the last few years on all of these areas. So I'll hand it over to him to generally talk about our approach, and then we'll weigh in both together when we talk about the specific things we work on.
Thanks, Vinay, and thanks Dan as well for that wonderful tee up here into this work. We've been I know we've been in close contact over the past several months, talking about some of these initiatives as well. So anyways, I just wanted to paint a picture here of what our 2030 goals are. We titled a decade of action just to be very closely parsed with the UN on the overall goals happening there, with countries coming together, states, cities, and seeing all of these initiatives kind of come together as one cause, similar to what we're doing here with the streaming media folks. So I quickly want to talk through our goals. So Akamai set a goal to be 100% renewable by 2030. That is for our global operations. So you take a look at the map and probably asking yourselves, how are we going to do it in some of these emerging countries? How are we going to do it with that meaning? I will talk about that in a moment on one of the next slides. We're working towards a zero emissions platform to mitigate 100% of our platform operations. To mitigate 100% of our platform emissions by 2030, using a variety of techniques there. We're working hard with our engineering teams and our architects. A lot of folks on Vinay's team actually today, and then across the business of coming up with innovative ideas to really accelerate the overall efficiency of the Akamai platform while we consider growth. So building a 50% more efficient Akamai platform. From our supplier vantage point today, which is a big measurable amount of our carbon emissions, it's about 2/3 today when you look at it in relative terms. We're looking to take and engage our top suppliers to quantify and achieve measurable reduction in emissions by 2030. We are actually launching that in a few weeks to start to engage our top 100 to really figure out what that overall footprint is. We have a good handle today on our scope 3, but we're even taking it a few steps further. So I'll explain a little bit more on another slide. And we're also working very hard in something that we're continuing and expanding a little bit to recycle 100% of our e-waste globally out of the facilities in which we have operations. Now, a lot of folks think of this as something that's impactful. It's this, especially those who see this waste going into third world countries and that type of thing. We actually take this incredibly seriously. If we can reuse every hardware that comes out of our operations, we will. And if it can't, we want to make sure that those precious metals and materials get reused in new servers and new hardware that's being developed on the market. So Green with Akamai for the decade of action. So we wanted to make sure in our overall approach that we were properly scaling our net zero approach. And there's a lot of claims out there today of folks going to net zero and what it means and what those operations are, and really kind of focusing in on whether or not the overall tangible benefit and value, but also looking at the overall potential for action and impact, right? Those are the big things here, is really how do you get a net zero with that true action and overall impact. So we work with our data center operators today to get a testable and audible renewable power for Akamai operations. This helps us on a variety of fronts, but it also helps work with the actual data center operation, which is one of the major issues here in the overall greening of streaming, where data centers are consuming so much power to serve traffic. This is really helping lower that overall impact by having our data centers work with providers locally, or bringing in net new sources of renewable energy into their operation. We actually work today with the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance on a program called Lesson. It's an education initiative which Akamai is sponsored to really help and reduce and really get the knowledge out to those individuals who are procuring energy on how to do it, and how to do it with true meaning and carbon abatement. Secondly, we develop our own purchaser cause new renewable energy globally. We have three projects, VPPA projects here in the U.S. today, where we're adding the fourth to come online in May of 2022. We are in the process of deploying our European strategy, and also just started some global research in some of the other areas across the globe, and including Central America, South America, and also Asia. So working on that and coming up with a strategy to fill in the blanks where data center operators cannot get renewable sources of energy. And then finally, looking at ways where we can really look at that the remaining carbon emissions number, which is kind of a could be sizable even with the renewable energy, depending on the amount of carbon that's being abated in those operations. Immediately work through energy efficiency with our engineers. Make sure that we're putting in traceable and certified carbon offsets, whether that's through sustainable forestry or carbon capture tech. And then looking at other renewable energy options, whether that's supplier driven or market driven for whatever else is remaining on the Akamai platform. Then I'll have you talk to this a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. So I mean, from our perspective, and I think all of our perspectives, the more efficient you can be, the more sustainable you are being, right? In most cases, the efficiency and sustainability go hand in hand. They are oftentimes, two outcomes out of the same work. And so in that space, we look at platform efficiency, very, very closely. So not only do we have various groups, look at what they themselves are doing and trying to make it more efficient, but we have a periodic, every few weeks, sync up with our CEO on how all our various efficiency efforts across the company are going. And so we look at everything. So from the hardware itself and how it's built. So we have hardware teams that are looking at all the various components available in the market and which ones we should be using, which ones we should not, how we should be talking to the vendors. I mean, the vendors come to us with a lot of their roadmaps and a lot of their plans, so we can talk to them about what they are building and how we should be sort of making things more efficient, more power efficient, and more performant and more power efficient. And that just starting from the hardware, so where we source the motherboards from, how they are built, which power supplies we will use, to how the racks themselves are powered. So in which situations do what kind of circuits to the rack make sense, all the way up the chain to the software, how the software utilizes all of these hardware capabilities. When our load balancing system is deciding where to place certain workloads, how do we find the right resources, the most efficient resources for different workloads, utilizing specific chipsets for encryption versus decryption, using specialized hardware. So it just keeps going up from our perspective all the way to operations. Again, there are many different ways in which you can use a vast body of deployed resources, and from a analytical and sort of optimization perspective, we are looking at constantly on how we could best utilize all of the deployed capacity we have. And that's just not a matter of how we use it, but then how we also turn off resources especially cores on the CPUs, putting drives to sleep, putting more popular access content on drives that consume less power. So every aspect of our platform, we're trying to understand where we have the big expenses in terms of dollars or watts, and optimize them, to the best of our ability. We have a major internal program where people can bring forth their ideas. There's, we actually go and have a forum that evaluates all the ideas that people put in. We award prizes to the good, to the ideas that we want to implement, give resources to make sure that they are implemented. So for us, it's something that comes, naturally, or it comes to us basically at the same level of importance as delivering the traffic or enabling the compute. And on the end of life, of course, I think Mike talked about it already, ensuring that all of this infrastructure and hardware that we have built for us, that we use for many years, that it is reused whenever possible, that it is decommissioned properly, that the rare earths and the valuable minerals, they go to the right places so that they can be reused. That is a big piece of it. Mike, did you want to add anything on this slide?
Yeah, I mean, I could say, Vinay, that's a phenomenal explanation of how we look at things. And, I think overall too, as you start to think about this, understanding what your business operational efficiency lifecycle is critical to really making inroads on how to improve efficiency, right? I think it's something that really lends itself to not only understanding the individual groups that are involved with the overall processes, but understanding where you are in the design cycles, how you're going to implement it, and how you're going to get that operations in a space where you're able to reduce energy versus use more and serve even more traffic, right? And then understand what that end of life piece is, because it's a continuous cycle that really doesn't end, right? And I think having that and understanding that is one of the criticalities here in really being able to deliver something that's efficient, optimized, secure, and able to deliver the right traffic for our customers.
Guys, I'm going to have to sort of hustle us in here because we're about half an hour behind time, and I just don't want to cut anyone off. But at the same time, we've clearly opened a can of worms with this topic. There is so much. Can I rather really just ask if you might have a sort of a wrap up of your session, and then I'm going to bring the next speakers in.
So just some final thoughts here, and I do believe if anyone wants to see this presentation at the end, we're happy to share it as well. Final thoughts. You should always be ready to scale sustainability as growth happens. Be at the ready. Understand your operational efficiency life cycle. Really have that overall grasp on what your footprint is. And make sure that you're constantly scaling efficiency throughout the operational life cycle, right? Whether it's end of life, whether it's at architecture phase, whether it's in the deployment stage or the operational phase, make sure that you have a good handle on where you can scale efficiency anywhere along that path. And then something I can tell you that's super important in order to really move the needle, be engaging your suppliers and employees on the benefits of being a more sustainable operation, right? Having employees understand the overall benefits really helps build the overall program, helps drive the company forward in the right direction. And it also, I think engaging suppliers at the end of the day really helps you figure out the ways where you can engage, understand, and really address those value chain emissions that could be happening from your business operations. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Very good, Mike. Vinay, thank you very much for that. And especially that last piece there, engaging your suppliers to help them work to make a difference along with employees.
Yes, absolutely.
Next up, we've got Nehal from Intel. And Nehal, are you out there?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So if you want to bring up your slides, I know you've got some interesting topics on this to talk about as well.
Sure. By the way, great presentation, Mike and Vinay. We wish everyone was as thoughtful as Akamai.
Thank you, Nehal.
Okay, is my content showing up okay?
It is.
Screen? Okay, so quick introduction. My name is Nehal Mehta, and I manage the content delivery network segment for Intel. I also have Tushar Gohad with me, my colleague. Tushar is a principal engineer at Intel focused on CDN and storage. And the question is, why is Intel here? As a silicon vendor, Intel has always aspired to be a global leader when it comes to sustainability and also in enabling our partners and customers to help them reduce their environmental impact. And in addition to that, both Tushar and I, we have been focused on the content delivery network segment for quite a few years now. So the viewpoints that we have over here are very much reflective of the collaboration that we have had with our partners and customers. So generally, when we think of streaming video and its impact on the carbon footprint, the top two things that most of the research out there tends to point to is the consumer device and the cellular networks. And I believe that it perfectly aligns with what Daniel shared earlier today. But interestingly, if you look at the technology transformation in both of these areas over the past few years, they are pretty mature and quite efficient to a certain degree. And relative to that, given some of the market trends on the delivery and distribution side, we are seeing that there are lots of servers that are being deployed on the edge, and there appears to be an opportunity to do more with the distribution and delivery part of the value chain. And so to put things in perspective, I found two of the data points that I'm showing on the left to be very fascinating. That these are from LiveStats. Every search that someone makes on the internet, and there's a significant contribution to the carbon emission, and every hour of streaming results into an equivalent carbon emission of 1 mile drive. The reality here is that when it comes to consumer entertainment, people are not going to stop watching or searching the web, and they're not going to care much about their power consumption in the home. And so we believe that the question here is more about where can you bring the change, and where is the low-hanging fruit, and how much of this can be attributed to the delivery portion of the pipeline. So what we have on the right, if you look at the two trends, what we are seeing is that first, the node level throughput for most of the CDN providers is at a point where software optimization is becoming extremely critical. And second, to the point that Vinay talked about earlier, we are seeing new highs for the peak capacity across the board. And so there is this growing disparity between the average capacity and peak capacity. So while it's very logical to deploy the CDN on bare metal today, you have lots of passive capacity or unused infrastructure, which potentially has a huge impact on carbon emission. So this is an area where we are currently working with a couple of CDN providers on an elastic CDN deployment. It is certainly easy to do it on a greenfield deployment than converting the existing ones. The other area that we have recently worked together with some of the hyperscalers and are also in early exploration with a couple of CDN providers is on managing network congestion. Network congestion is a topic which appears to be least explored, but there has been lots of new development in this space. And we believe that as the nodes become more and more powerful, the focus will eventually shift to system level network optimizations. And the reality here is that if you're dealing with frequent network congestion, then no matter what you do at node level, there's always going to be a waste and duplication and need for retransmission. So to my earlier point, except for some parts of Asia, where you still have low throughput or skinny connections, what we are observing is that most of the CDN providers today have transitioned to 100 gig or multiple 100 gig nodes. And with more and more complex and tiled architecture in modern CPUs, regardless of whether it's a 2-socket platform or a 1-socket platform, how you manage compute, memory, and IO resources in terms of resource locality in the software is becoming extremely critical. What it means is that if you're about to access your memory or storage, and if those elements are not localized to the local CPU zone, then you're going to end up wasting your compute and IO resources. You're very much going to be severely limited in scaling your throughput to what the hardware is actually capable of. So you may end up in deploying many more nodes than what you might need. So in case, if you're interested in this topic, we have published a case study with one of the most industry performant CDN software stack from Varnish. Currently, we can exceed more than 400 gig of throughput per node with all of the optimizations. And for a typical edge location, where you need to serve, let's say, 2 terabits per second of traffic, it does help to cut down on the number of servers needed. So over here, for 2 terabits per second of capacity, going from 50 Gbps to 400 Gbps, you only need 6 servers as opposed to 48 servers, assuming that you have some backup nodes too over here. And besides resource locality, there are many other areas such as bringing in thread modeling for asynchronous IO, or to Vinay's point, managing TLS or compute intensive traffic through better instruction sets or offload techniques, or maybe even optimizing the network and storage stacks can help to contribute in increased throughput. So if this is an area of interest for this community, we can certainly bring up our extended team to help collaborate. And then the other topic I mentioned earlier was dealing with network congestion, which probably is relatively more of an emerging area for CDNs. We can now do things in this space that was not possible before, mainly because we did not have some of the technologies available in the past. But today, we have data plane telemetry in most of the switches that are available out there. We now have ways to implement proactive congestion control rather than having a reactive congestion control mechanism. On large-scale disaggregation, you can now modify the data plane forwarding behavior. So now you can tell a switch to not only modify the flow, but also change the behavior of the switch itself. And our belief is that through informed routing, through programmable networks, and by using proactive techniques in congestion control, you can greatly reduce the overall capacity needs and thereby lowering the infrastructure required. One other area that we see that appears to be gaining lots of interest, particularly in the telco space, is around open caching. And we do believe that some of the system level congestion techniques here could potentially also be standardized as part of the open caching initiative. So, overall, the key takeaway over here is that, in working with our ecosystem partners and our customers, the CDN providers, we see 2 opportunities where, we could potentially collaborate with the community. One is in optimizing the infrastructure. And there's a link to the white paper on the right that I was referring to earlier. And we believe that relative to the infrastructure optimization, the system level network initiative is still more emerging. It's still new. And we believe that there's more to be done in this space too. So Dom, back to you. Tim.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Nail, awesome. You're always a great contributor at the Content Delivery Summits and help us understand the options we've got at a sort of pure fabric level. And it's invaluable having your participation and enthusiasm in the greening of streaming at our outset. And I think some of these topics of community collaboration should definitely be discussed as working group candidates for the greening of streaming community at our initial meeting. So I look forward to your input and participation there. I'm going to step up the speed a little bit. If we had a real streaming player, I would be moving the dial up to 1.5 playback speed right now, because if we're going to sort of try to make sure we don't push anyone out over meetings that they might have after this, we're going to have to get our speed dating round to run really smoothly and quickly now. So with no further ado, Ian, are you out there? Can I ask you to step to the fore and to introduce Blackbird and your 5-minute presentation? I'm going to be loosely bringing my bell to the fore here, but only if you get beyond 5.5 minutes. Over to you.
I should be pretty succinct, I think, so I'll try anyway. Right, let me just get this shared. First of all, right, share. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, we're
all good. Okay, so just a very quick intro, first of all. We started off this project without knowing much about the lexicon. I've learned a lot today, actually, from the various presenters, and all very good presentations. But I've learned a lot about the lexicon, and I think going forward we will probably have our presentation even more detailed and more clear. But just a quick intro about Blackbird. First of all, Blackbird is a cloud video editing platform. We are unique in the sense that we have 10 patents and 6 pending patents around our software, around our core technology, and we work for people like Bloomberg. We work for the NHL, for BT, for Tata Communications. We work for the US State Department. We work for Riot Games. Through partners, we also work for the NFL and the Olympics. So we're kind of very knowledgeable about what's going on in terms of traditional workflows in video production. So slightly different to what everyone else has been talking about today. I'm going to talk a little bit about video production and the impact that's currently having on the environment, and how we think it can be drastically changed and improved. I'm not going to go through this slide because we all know there's an issue with CO2, so I'll go straight to this one. And with this slide, I'm actually quoting numbers that have come from BAFTA via the Albert scheme, that in traditional television, making 1 hour of television releases around 9.2 tons of CO2. They have equated that to around 27.6 meters squared of sea ice loss. I don't know how thick that sea ice is, but I think you get the picture. It's quite an impact. And if you think of the hundreds of thousands or the millions of hours of television that's produced around the world every year, then I think you get some idea of the fact that we have a bit of an issue. Now, it is improving. People are understanding that that video production has a problem, but we wanted to raise it even further and raise it to get some change, to get to real drive change. So our paper that we're looking at through now, we're just looking at the summary of, was called "Video Shouldn't Cost the Earth." It was produced by Blackbird, but in conjunction with an environmental consultancy called Green Element. And we looked at what caused that. What caused that 9.2 tons of CO2 to be released? What kind of impact were they having? Daniel, in his opening presentation today, really kind of nailed it in terms of the lexicon. We said in our paper it was manufacturing kit, it was buying electricity, and it was moving content. So he called it direct electricity and then upload and download, and that's really what has caused the majority of it. There is also an additional point, is that when you're producing content remotely or in a different place, that there's a transport element to get to the actual event as well. So what we looked at in terms of a workflow is a remote event that's taking place where you had to travel to it to create it. It's a 2-week sports event. It could be a tennis event. We're a Wimbledon-based company, so it could be a tennis event, for instance. And we compared what a tennis event covered on the video editing side by an on-premise piece of equipment versus a cloud-based piece of equipment versus Blackbird, which is a cloud-native piece of equipment or in a cloud-native software. Cloud-native means that rather than cloud-based, which is effectively a traditional NLE that's been put in the cloud, in a lift and shift kind of model, cloud-native is where the workflow has been thought from start to finish to be in the cloud. So it's every piece of technology, every piece of software, every codec that's between start and finish has been designed specifically for the cloud. And the headline is there, as you can see, that for an event like that, just a 2-week event, there's 174 tons of carbon that is created using a traditional on-premise NLE system. Blackbird was 91% more carbon efficient, or 91% less CO2 than that traditional system. Cloud-based systems didn't take into consideration, of course, any transport. People weren't traveling to the event, but Blackbird was still 80+% more efficient than a cloud-based system because it was effectively, as I said, this lift and shift model. Now, the other thing is that I think that you said at the beginning, Dom, that just because it's efficient, does it naturally cost more? Well, we've also brought out another paper this year to say that actually, not only does being efficient not cost more, it costs considerably less, around 35% less that we talked about in our TCO paper, our total cost of ownership paper a few months ago. And it's also very efficient with time. So it's an awful lot faster to do this. So to paraphrase Elon Musk, we're not just trying to create a cloud-based system or a better cloud-based system. We're trying to create a better system, full stop. So it's better on carbon, it's better on cost, and it's better on speed. So that's where we've got to so far, and we're really happy with the results. We think it could make a big.
Keep going. Keep going.
Okay.
Finish up, but you get sort of last.
So yes, we all want to reduce carbon, but of course we all know that becoming carbon neutral means that generally, unless you're making things more efficient, you're going to actually be using renewable fuels, as the guys talked about earlier, and you're also going to be using offsets. Both those cost money. We think that broadcasters really want to get carbon neutral. They also want to become more efficient. So this is definitely a way to do that. And in conclusion, because I know the bell is ringing, we want to talk about how we do that. We want to try and create a movement to create this in the industry. And we talked about having targets. So rather than people looking at how cheaply they can make content, they want to say how carbon efficient they can make content. We want to leverage talent to create more systems like Blackbird that can reduce carbon, be more sustainable, and also just use existing technology more widely, because that's already there in the market, and we can have an immediate and huge positive impact. Thank you very much.
I feel so bad ringing these bells in these presentations because I want to go. I want to roll on and on. But if we don't, we're going to cause problems all the way down the pipeline. So thank you so much, Ian. It also reminded me I prepared a poll, so I'm kind of interested in what you guys are thinking about what we're trying to do with Greening of Streaming. So there is a poll there. If you get a chance to click the boxes, that would be great. Kumar, are you out there? Could I ask you to step up to the microphone? Ian, please stick around if you can after hours just to chat. There's lots of chat going on and Q&A. Be great to discuss some of these points further.
Sure, well done.
Hey, Kumar, how you doing?
Good. Hey, Dom.
Excellent. Could I ask you to take us away with your presentation? I'll start the clock.
Sure. All right, great. Can you see my screen now?
Yep, all good. Well, it's black at the moment.
All right, great. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Tim, for the initiative. Great to be a part of this group. So MediaMelon is a company based in San Francisco. It's a streaming technology company. we provide quality of experience analytics. So that's audience engagement, advertising efficiency, how the different network aspects of network infrastructure are performing. So we provide that. And we also provide a technology called Smart Play, which is more useful and appropriate for this event. And that is about how you can reduce the use of network infrastructure and still get a good quality of streaming, and do that without changes to the encoders, to the network infrastructure and the players. So my colleague, Simon Orm, has prepared a short video that I'd like to play here.
Hello, I'm Simon Orm, Business Development Lead for MediaMelon. At MediaMelon, we use data derived from analysing video assets and from monitoring the experience of users to enhance streaming performance and improve the viewer's quality of experience. One of the key tools we use to achieve this is Smart Play, a product which extracts metadata from each video asset and uses this to modify the adaptive bitrate switching algorithm so that the user experience is managed based on the complexity and quality of the video as it's streamed rather than just on bitrate. An additional benefit of this is that the amount of data required to deliver an improved user experience is typically reduced by 30%. In a recent study at Telecine in Brazil, data was reduced by around 42%, whilst buffering was reduced by 50%. And here, Smart Play was deployed on top of a state-of-the-art content-aware encoding solution. But today, I wanted to highlight the environmental benefits of Smart Play resulting from this reduced data. In recent months, much has been written in the media about the impact on the planet of digital in general and video streaming in particular. From Bitcoin to Netflix, the media just love to find a bogeyman. If the Channel 4 report on Despacito was correct, YouTube alone would be consuming more electricity than the whole global data center and networking industry combined. The numbers are clearly too high, but video streaming is a contributor to greenhouse gases and we can do something about it. Rather like the narrative of video webcast solutions like Zoom, who argue that they may be emitting greenhouse gases, but far less than the impact of executive travel if people were still flying to seminars, in the TV industry many have thought that streaming must be greener than traditional broadcast. Well, according to a BBC report, terrestrial broadcasting uses the least energy with satellite, cable and streaming in the sin bin. Of course, organisations and industry sectors will try and spin the science to show it's not us, it's them, and we need to be conscious of the politics and the optics of this whole area. Having said all that, we have ourselves adopted the model created by the Carbon Trust and DIMPACT, which is a streaming industry body. To ensure we focus solely on incremental impact of data-related changes, we have specifically focused on the power model approach based on work by Malmodin. So what did we find? Well, Smart Play impacts two areas in the supply chain. First, in the data center where content processing happens, and here we run a lightweight video analyzer to extract metadata, describing the video quality and complexity along the timeline. This allows us to identify chunks in the ABR profile ladder which will never be needed. These can be removed from origin storage. Typically, this will save just over 20 grams of CO2 equivalent per hour of video stored per year. Note that we've not modelled the impact of this on downstream caching in the CDN. Secondly, we modify ABR switching to improve the user experience, and this reduces data in the delivery phase, as I explained earlier. There is interaction with the Smart Play portal during each session, but the resulting aggregate impact is a saving of around 150 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per million viewing hours. So if we take a mid-sized streaming operation like, say, ITV, then over a year, the saving would be around 75 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. A streaming operation of this size is probably generating around 500 tons of CO2 equivalent per year. So Smart Play will be making a 10 to 20% contribution to reduction targets. That's significant. Thank you.
Well, that was good. That finished bang on the bell, Kumar. Thank you so much. Listen, Kumar, you're aware we're running behind, and I really do want to keep bringing things forward. But please stick around if you can, and also hopefully if you're participating in the members groups and so on, then we can discuss things in more depth then. But a great presentation. Really appreciated it. Okay. Steph, we're going to swiftly move on to you at Jetstream. How are you doing? Are you set to go?
I'm set to go. Yes.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to press the start reset on the clock and go.
Great. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, a brief introduction. We produced our first webcast in 1994 and built our first CDN in 1997. And we've been a European streaming platform since 2003. We make it easy to build complex streaming workflows. You can mix all our components with your own. We have an integration API and a portal, so you can do that yourself. We run our CDN, and we also have integrated global multi-CDN, so we can scale up to the world beyond our own capacity. Actually, in 2004, we wanted to scale up our infrastructure, and then we decided to move to a full green streaming setup. So we have been streaming green since 2004, using green energy, and it's carbon neutral. The best way to go there was to switch to green data centers. There was a new data center in the Netherlands back then. It was called EvoSwitch. I think they're now called Iron Mountain. And they started the Green Fan program, and they used three components. One was top cooling, the second was cold corridors, and the third one was using green energy. And top cooling is very interesting because the air conditioning in data centers is even more using more energy than the computers are. So reducing air conditioning was a dramatic decrease of the energy consumption. What it does is it uses outside air to cool the data center in regular days, and it will only kick in the air conditioning if the days are becoming hot, in the summer. So that saves a lot of energy. Cold corridors is about closing down the alleys with the servers. So you don't have free air flowing inside the hall. It's just inside the racks. So you only cool the places that need to be cooling. That also reduced a lot of power waste. But another thing that we use is what we call a tiered Cdn architecture. We have multiple tiers. So we actively monitor the popularity of files and streams and then add more servers when it's necessary. We don't just simply cache everything around there. And that saves a lot of storage, but also a lot of servers. So only really popular files and streams are propagated to additional servers. That saves a lot of space, energy, and costs. Another thing that we have been focusing on from the beginning is application density. So when we started, there was no Kubernetes, there was no virtualization. So we decided to run multiple applications on one server. We actually had a server in the late 90s that was running QuickTime, Real, Windows Media, Icecast, and Apache on one machine. And that totally densified the hardware that we required, because then those applications can really maximize the use of the CPUs and the memory and the storage. We actually still use that same approach. Of course, QuickTime is Windows Media, that stuff is gone. It's all caching stuff these days, but we still use Kubernetes. We still use those technologies. But we don't use virtualization, not at all, because virtualization is killing for consumption. Another thing that we're doing is that a lot of people in the streaming industry outsource the infrastructure to clouds, but we don't. We run our own servers, and this year we are replacing all our existing servers. This is a new POP. Our previous POPs were 2 racks, so 2 racks filled with hardware. And because of the increased power of hardware, thanks to Intel, as they shown, we can decrease the physical presence and also the power consumption and the cooling. So this is one POP, and it can hold more than a petabyte of storage. It has 136 cores. It can do 200 gigabits per second of streaming capacity if you want. So that saves a lot of power in there. I think we have 15% more power than the old servers at 75% of the power consumption. And we calculated that the return on investment is 2 years because we save power, rack space, and operational costs. The biggest challenge, I guess, for us is transcoding. We used to outsource all the transcoding to AWS, but we want to do this in-house because also we want to have a full European operation without any US involvement because of the European privacy laws. So we want to do everything in-house. So we developed a live transcoding platform, and we are in the process of optimizing CPU load versus quality. And that's an interesting research that we're doing. We have been looking at various transcoding hardware. We are going to use Intel-based CPUs, but we've always been investigating AMD because they have these massive thread-ripping CPUs, which are also interesting cost-wise. But we're also looking into NVIDIA acceleration, so to use GPU acceleration for transcoding, which may also save on video transcoding. So that's it.
Wow, on the bell.
Thank you very much.
Literally on the bell. Thank you so much, Steph. Brilliant presentation. Sergio, can I bring you to the floor?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go full
Awesome.
screen with the presentation. Cool. Coming up. You see my screen?
All good. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, start.
Great. So thank you, Don, for the invitation, and good evening, everyone. This is Sergio Carulli from MediaMelon. And tonight I'd like to share with you something about our efforts in the field of sustainability. Before that, just let me spend a few words to introduce our company, because maybe not everybody knows us. We are a media delivery provider, and our goal is empowering enterprises, media, and gaming companies to ensure the best quality of experience to their audience, and to provide also full governance over the live and on-demand video distribution process. And we have designed and developed our own infrastructure, and we called it Intelligent Media Delivery Platform, with a scalability and sustainability in our mind. We started from scratch, transforming static data traffic distribution processes with the support of intelligent traffic management systems. This resulted in an improvement in network efficiency, an improvement in resources optimization, and at the end also in a reduced energy consumption. Talking about the energy consumption, let's see our efforts for its reduction. We have basically 3 categories. The first one is the hardware optimization, and we have streamlined our servers, selecting the most efficient combination of hardware for video delivery. Considering that since our foundation 5 years ago, we have been totally focused on video delivery. That explains also how we could build our infrastructure using hardware specifically streamlined for that. Second, intelligent software, big data analysis, and the monitoring of quality of experience and of the network condition allows the platform to choose the path of the least resistance without overloading the networks. And the most important, the smart architecture, the one I like most. By using our proprietary technology, we have managed to reduce the hardware needs for our own infrastructure. Let's see how. So in this slide, I have depicted the traditional content distribution, the old style, let's say, and our content distribution. As you can see, unlike the traditional content distribution, our architecture allows for a reduced hardware set. How we manage. In the traditional architecture, the data flows from the origin server to the acquirer or parent servers, and then to the edge servers. Instead, in our architecture, we are not using any acquirer server. The data flows from the origin to the edge servers, so less hardware, less energy consumption. Every single content will be recognized as unique and will be copied from the origin directly to the one single edge server and only to it, reducing total cache size and storage needs. Then the end users are directed to the edge server that contains that unique content they want to access. One of the functions of our platform is also to predict the peaks of requests for the unique content based on real-time traffic and network analysis. So if a content becomes popular, then the algorithms will identify the most efficient edge servers to copy the content to, and then balance the end user's request between those servers. And so this is our effort in reducing the energy consumption of data centers, and this is our commitment to a greener future. So that's it. Thank you for your attention. And if you need more information, feel free to contact me directly to my email address. Was this fast enough?
Oh, that was awesome. I'm looking at the clock thinking, really? 3:42, this is a record. Okay, you have some beating to, some time to beat here. Stein, are you out there? Can we move on to you? Fantastic presentation, Sergio. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please stick around if you can. I think you have to go, but if you can,
I have
stick around,
to go,
I'll come
but
back.
really feel free, everybody, to contact me via email. You have my email now, so I'll be waiting for your emails. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Stein, are you out there?
Yes, if you could start my video, I'll share my screen right now. I think it was.
Okay, let's get that going. Where are we?
And if not, at least you can see my screen.
Yeah, if we ask to start video, off we go. I'll turn mine off.
Very good. So I'll go through this. Part of what I was going to talk about today was so well presented by Ian McDonough around the efficiencies of cloud native video editing, which is part of our story. So I'll take a little bit of a different tack and talk about my own philosophy, our company's philosophy, and a bit about our Norwegian view of kind of the collective responsibility of all of us towards the planet. You know, my own experience in this, I lived in Groton, Massachusetts in the 90s. And if you know anything about Groton, the old mills in New Hampshire and Massachusetts used to feed the Nashua River with all sorts of pollution, chemicals. And in the 60s and 70s, it was said you could light it on fire. And it was one of the impetus for the starting of the EPA and various conservation and ecological movements here in the United States. And so living there in the 90s, there was a great feeling of doing something and giving back. And we certainly were a family of means. And so there was an effort around our house in the woods where we used to go to, where they were going to build massive developments, really tear down the forest. And we spent a lot of time there. And we saw that these woods were being developed as wetlands. And so my father and my family, we got access, and this was before Google Earth, to satellite images of these woods. And we took our own plane. As I said, we came from a position of responsible wealth here. And we actually took pictures of this area and compared it to the satellite photos and found that there was an emergence of wetlands in this area. And so we got this rated as, you know, protected wetlands through this. And so that's my own experience and thought process in this. You know, we came from wealth, we had means, and we used that to make an impact in our local community. And that's really where, you know, all of it starts. Similarly, Vimond as a company has started with that same type of energy. You know, we're in Norway. Norway is a leader, you know, sadly, both in oil distribution and energy, but also in green technology. We're developing green maritime tech. We're focused on reusable energy. 50% of all cars now sold in Norway are electric. Most people in our office have electric cars of some source. We have 96% of our energy comes from renewable hydroelectric energy, and we're always looking to improve that type of number. And this idea of a collective responsibility in that kind of Norwegian soul goes back, you know, 1,000 years. We've always left land aside. We've always believed that we all have a responsibility to take care of the environment around us, and that carries through now. And we look as a nation to become the leader in green technology and really drive that forward. So a little about what we do. You know, as a company, we grew out of TV2 in Norway, and we have two main product lines at two different points in this type of green evolution. Our main business has been around content management, and we've served and brought up OTT services, currently serving about 100 million end users. We're in 60 countries, 100 live channels, and that's really gone through this first phase of, I suppose, greening, as you call it, right? We're using collective, centrally managed data centers, CDNs, and things like that. And that effort, you know, on our side is really working with the other companies here that our members are taking part of this greening and streaming, using better CDN technologies as explained by Akamai, using better edge distribution technologies, reducing the amount of copies and files in that product. And then we're also at the earlier stage of this greening process, similar to what Ian shared on Blackbird on the video editing side. And there again, we're producing a ton of content. So our footprint is big and our customer base is big, and we have a global impact, right? And so if you take a look at kind of where we're spread, we realize that we're a big part of this energy consumption around the world through our customers. And so we're looking at attacking this in different ways. On the cloud editing side, we really realized and built this cloud native editor, as Ian talked about, to be very cloud friendly and focus on, how we can do remote workflows, how we can allow staff to operate remotely from a home without travel, without physical footprint, without having to move forward. We can centrally manage the software up in the cloud. We can have less copies of various files. We can use shared copies. We can access content where it already lives. So we're not having to pull all the kind of content that we're editing into our own solution and making a copy. We can use it where it's already existing. We can use less compute time. And part of being cloud native, we can shut down various processes and various points of the application when it's not being used. So we can use less compute. We can bring that down during non-peak times. We can leave that idle when users aren't using it. We can spin up capacity in limited cases when needed. And then I think the bigger part of this is just the single instance storage. So how do we reduce the number of copies, the number of versions here using common software? And again, this is browser based, so we're not tying in the traditional NLE world. You have specific hardware, specific use set, specific energy consumption. And this is really, our first big contribution on the greening side is really focus on this cloud editor, how we can reduce, as Ian used in those great numbers, how we can reduce the overall carbon footprint. At the same time, with our broader CMS, our VIA product, we'll look to work with the various partners and other people involved in this initiative. And I'll wrap it up. And thank you for the time, Don.
No, it's fine. You can finish the sentence. We're not that harsh.
I think it was good. All I want to say is we're excited to be here, and certainly this really hits home for our kind of Norwegian soul and this broader collective idea of doing good and giving back to the world. So we appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Brilliant presentation and great some emotive parts at the beginning of that story as well, which I really appreciated. So that's cool. Thanks very much, Stein. Hope you can stick around. We'll be chatting after hours. Remy, ATEME, are you there?
I'm there, Dom, and everyone.
Cool.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay, Dom?
Yep, absolutely fine. Over to you.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Remy. I'm running strategy and marketing in ATEME. I'm here at the ATEME premises live, and I'm glad to be with you to discuss how ATEME, like my other fellows, can help solve the problem of the green challenge. First, let's define what the problem is, because we hear a lot about the solution, but let's make sure that we define, at least from our point of view, what it means. So ATEME, as I will explain, does provide video processing and streaming solutions. So we are really at the control plane layer. We provide, we stream, we process bits and bytes, and we optimize them. Our customers, the big content providers and service providers, they are facing a challenge. This challenge is, how can I make sure that I maximize my quality of experience without impacting my profitability? How can I make sure that I can keep attracting customers, but also pleasing my investors, and so manage to increase my efficiency and keep my costs down? I'm sure that all of my colleagues are on the same side. On top of this usual balance, now we have, how can we cope with the green challenge? How can we make sure that we continue our growth, we continue attracting customers, we continue innovating, but at the same time, we can put the earth, the carbon footprint, the carbon emission as part of the overall equation. And actually in ATEME, this is what we do. We have leading tier 1 and content providers that trust us because we help them boost their audience. We provide high-performing solutions, high-quality solutions, so that they can attract and keep their subscriber with pristine, ultimate experience on any screen. As we control the technology, we can help them drive the acquisition of new viewers, new services, new experiences. We help them captivate the audience. We control the processing, we control the streaming. So we provide the performances to help them boost and acquire new audience. And last but not least, we help them innovate. Everybody is almost doing the same TV service now. How can I make sure that now I'm different? How can I make sure that I, as a streaming platform, as a content providers going OTT, as a pay TV operators going multi-screen, I can enable my customers with a different experience, moving from lineup to experience. So that's the DNA of ATEME. And when I spoke about that, I spoke about performances. I spoke about quality. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it was true because people were saying, hey, can you increase your density in terms of processing? Can you increase your hit ratio in terms of CDN streaming? Because I want to have a better performing solution. But nowadays, these aspects are turned into a green aspect. If I can increase the performances of my system, then I can guarantee to my customers that I can lower the performance, the carbon footprint, the power consumption of these. Same quality with less CPU or hardware resources. Hence, we save some carbon emission. As we are here to testify, but also provide some real case example, let's take this example of a customer in Latin America. This is an incumbent and historic pay TV operators. They are willing to renew, they were willing to renew their system with a more efficient system. And we were telling him, you can not only provide an efficient system, but also a greener system. So thanks to the fact that we control the full technology stack between processing and technology, and a bit like Steph from Jetstream was explaining, we were able to lower the footprint of the transcoding appliances. Instead of hitting full cabinet, it needed only 8 RUs. The result? We did lower the power consumption by 60%. We could do that because, again, as we control the full-blown technology stack of compression, we can optimize the performances. If we can optimize the performances, we can have a better ratio, watt per pixel, better density, and lower the power consumption. But that was not only it. We could also increase the bandwidth efficiency per transponder. Same quality with more channels onto the same pipe. As a result, less QAM used. I described it for QAM, that's the same for an IP delivery, that's the same for a DTH delivery. And we could do that because, again, we control and we manage the performances of our solution. And I'm done.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You.
Once again, I'm sorry to keep hustling people forward.
No worries.
I really appreciate
Perfect.
it. Great presentation. Loads of information in there. Stick around. We'll chat after hours, and if you can, that is. And I don't want to hold up the next guest because he's halfway around the world the other way. We've got Adam from Point Digital Media. Adam, are you out there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
All the way from Singapore. We can hear you. Yep. If you want to
Okay.
share your presentation.
I don't have a presentation. It's just me.
Okay, let me just switch that to there. And
Okay.
oh, I can't. Where's your video, Adam? Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, hold on. Let me when you do, you get your video on the screen.
Yes, my video has started.
There we go.
All right, you got me.
All yours. Clock starting in 3, 2.
2, 1. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name's Adam, and I'm speaking to you from the world headquarters of Point Digital Media here in Singapore. We are based here, but we have associates in Delhi and Chennai, and soon to be opening in Los Angeles. It's been really eye-opening to learn about how much interest is growing and how many people are getting behind the adoption of sustainable and more responsible practices in the streaming industry. Certainly the greatest impacts will all come via the infrastructure of networks and servers where all the content actually gets to consumers. But for me, there's been a lot of new knowledge here. My experience is on the production side. That's both here in Asia and in the USA. Commercials, documentaries, television, feature film, all the way to streaming video. And it's given me some insight into what can be done to help practice conscious, intentional, measurable, low to zero waste production. It's what I call the pointy end, where the content gets created. Now, sustainable film and video production has for the longest time almost been an oxymoron. And although things are moving in a better direction, it's far from being baked into the production process. In the search for the perfect product shot or just the right framing, I mean, I personally have seen cases of waste and barely used expendables, and water bottles opened and discarded unfinished, planes, motor scooters, cars either intentionally blown up or wrecked accidentally or flown halfway around the world for just 2 days of filming. Those are the good old days. But we agree that video content in totality should be more sustainable. So that's our starting point. And we're always looking for ways to reduce the amount of energy and cut waste in the process. So with some greener thinking and planning, we've implemented a few things pre-pandemic, which we continue with and hope to expand and making our productions more sustainable. The first steps are pretty simple. We banned the use of single-use plastics on set, changed our approach to craft service. Water bottles have also been removed. We use water coolers and ask every team member from the client side down to all crew and talent, they bring their own refillable bottles. We use trash and plastic receptacles, and on occasion, there's been for compostable items. When we're not filming, lights and other electrical equipment other than fans when they're needed are powered down. Paper on set has been nearly fully replaced with digital documents that team members can access. On the post side, we've reduced the number of always-on equipment for editing and post-production. We found that it doesn't really disrupt the flow of things. We've also sought where possible to make our workflows more cloud reliant. And through the pandemic, this has naturally gathered pace because of by necessity. I would like to add here that I found Schien and Ian's presentations really illuminating and timely. And gentlemen, I hope to learn some more. With regards to the power that you need for post, that's certainly a little bit more of a sideward step, but we have been able to reduce our on-site consumption and cut down on emissions from transport. So these are tiny steps in the right direction, and we're striving to make our productions as zero waste as possible while still being able to create compelling content. But how do we start to do more? These problems, they require input and action from everyone in creation along with distribution. Prior to this event, I'd read about Blackbird. I can see how that can work for our business. I found the title of one of their sustainability papers really appropriate. Video shouldn't cost the earth. Also, and more production specific, I've learned of an organization which has provided case studies, toolkits, and even a platform for calculating a production's carbon footprint. And you could even purchase carbon credits. We're not there as a company yet, but like this organization, GreeningofStreaming, it's something that we embrace and seek to champion. wearealbert.org is where you can find that, where you can take action on parts of our respective footprints. And we can't, let me sum it up because I can see the bell. Production side, we have a responsibility too. So to conclude, I would love to have conversations with some of the other attendees, how to learn some more, share, and collaborate. Thanks.
Awesome. Adam, thank you so much. Really appreciated. Point Digital Media all the way from Singapore. So, we had a slight audio problem with you there, although we could hear you. But if you have an overdub for my archive, then do let me have that in due course, Adam. But it was appreciated.
Okay.
Mark from Netin, you're up next. Are you ready?
I believe so. Yes. Let's see here.
Floor is yours.
Okay. You can see the slide. Okay.
Yep, you're all good.
All right, awesome. So yes, Mark Donegan from NetInt, and I'm here to talk about the ASIC advantage. NetInt, we have developed a purpose-built video encoding and transcoding ASIC chip that is really awesome and fits perfect into the greening of streaming because using silicon, you can get a 10x density advantage compared to software on CPU and an 18x advantage in terms of performance, which translates really directly to an environmental improvement. In fact, you can get, if you look at frames per second, so FPS divided by watts, so power consumption, compared to X264 and CPU, it's really nearly a 20x advantage. It's massive. And then compared to X265, so with the HEVC standard, it's nearly a 200x advantage, really significant. And what I'd like to do is just provide a real quick overview of our first generation ASIC called the G4. The G4 supports H.264 and HEVC video decoding and encoding. It has a very high performance PCIe 4.0 capability built into it, NVMe interface, and supports on-chip advanced video algorithms for region of interest and some other really cool things that are useful in video. Our next generation Codensity G5 is going to add AV1, and that will give actually a 4x speed and density improvement over the current generation, all the way up to AV1 8K live, as well as AI computational capacity. So we're very excited about the next generation G5. What I want to do is actually jump into some real world use cases. We're here to talk about data, and we have done a lot of work with Ampere on the ARM platform, although a lot of the performance advantage directly translates to x86. So whether that's on the Intel architecture or AMD architecture. But these next two slides are showing specifically ARM, and this is on the Ampere Ultra, the Q80 platform. So here what we did is we transcoded a 1080p 24 stream to 720p 24. This is all live, and it was producing comparable qualities, so subjective evaluation. And what we're doing is we compared X264 running on CPU, so again running on the ARM cores, which of course ARM is very energy and power efficient. It's an excellent platform. And what we were able to achieve here is a 10x density advantage. The graph that you're looking at here, you can translate in terms of the frames per second. You can see on the y-axis, and you'll notice that across all 80 cores, with fewer than 10 cores, you can get to full performance, whereas you see software just ramps as we would expect, somewhat linearly across the core count, and it's very easy to see the vast superior performance, where on just 10 cores we can get nearly 5,000 frames per second of throughput of transcode performance, whereas with 80 cores you can barely reach 500. So really significant advantage there. And then if we look at energy consumption advantage, what I really like about this slide is we're taking into account the full energy that needs to be consumed by the chassis as well as the hardware transcoders. And so here we're consuming 270 watts of total power, and we're able to get, again, almost 5,000 frames per second of throughput, which is really remarkable. And if you'd like to learn more information, go to netint.ca. There's a lot more benchmarks and more product information available there. So thank you very much.
Perfect timing. Another one.
All right.
Oh, Mark, thank you very much for that. That was a great presentation. With that, we've kind of run through the speed dating stage of running around the industry, starting fires and discussions about all sorts of different perspectives of the sustainability issues that the streaming sector faces. And I'm certain from seeing discussions in the chat room and in the Q&A that we have started a number of discussions. But now we have to turn a little bit to Greening of Streaming as an organization itself. And part of becoming an industry organization also involves making sure that we're not repeating work that's already being done, and that we form close communications and contacts with other bodies that perform similar roles to ourselves, just to make sure that we're not asking everybody in the industry to do things twice in two places. You know, nobody wants to do their homework twice for two teachers. Well, I'm maybe talking about my kids there, but it's important that we understand how we work together. And we've got two different industry associations, one of which may be very new to you, and one of which it should be fairly familiar to you. The first of these is the Cdn Alliance, and I have Mark de Jong, who is the chairman of the Cdn Alliance, to introduce and talk a little bit about their initiative and their sustainability focus. Mark, please take over.
Yeah, perfect. You see my screen?
Yep, all good.
Perfect, good. Thank you, Dom. So the Cdn Alliance, again, like Dom said, very new. We launched officially September 1st. So we're a little bit more than a week old officially, publicly, and we really focus, as the name says, on the CDN industry. Our mission basically is we are an independent nonprofit organization, so we're not related to a specific CDN or CDN technology vendor or anything like this, and we're a nonprofit, so we're really focusing on the industry and the industry alone, with benefiting the industry as well. What we really do is connect, support, and represent. That's basically what we do. So we connect the actual industry on one single place, both the industry companies as well, the people that are in it, as well as communication with, connecting with other organizations out there, like for instance, Greening of Streaming, but lots of others. And we also support the industry, and we do this through different activities. We initiate them, we facilitate them, and we cooperate with other industry members and organizations to do the same. And we call them as we represent ourselves as being the face and the voice of the industry. And we do this on a global scale. So we really want to focus on a global approach on the CDN industry, as well as CDN community as part of it. And we do this across the whole ecosystem. So not just the CDN service providers, but also CDN technology providers, ecosystem partners like ISPs, carriers, data centers, etc. And also the actual customers and users of CDN technology. And last but not least, we focus on the full CDN spectrum. So media is one of the elements that we do, but we also do regular bit delivery, dynamic delivery, security, and edge capabilities. So we cover the full CDN ecosystem. On the sustainability side, and like Dom said, one of the things that we do is we focus on industry challenges. And one of those industry challenges, if you have read our press release, is sustainability. And we really want to look at it from a CDN industry perspective, like Dom already said, not to repeat everybody and everybody doing it on their own, but also bring everybody together and look at this from a CDN industry and share this amongst each other. And as a CDN industry, we have we put in a statement on the sustainability, but we have a big responsibility. 50% of all internet traffic is done by CDNs, and with that, we have a great capability on making a material impact on savings that we can do as a CDN industry. We're also in a very unique position because we're ready as an industry focused on efficient distribution, similar to what Akamai said. We have things in place that make it easier and possibly more efficient to do this also on the energy side in terms of carbon neutral capabilities. We also focus on the full ecosystem. So we look across the whole ecosystem. So like I said, CDN service providers, but also technology side, hardware, software, but also ISPs, carriers, all the different elements. We look at it as a total ecosystem, and that's how we look at it and look at how we can solve the sustainability issues. And we work also with other partner organizations in those specific elements to talk how we can do this on a global scale towards the whole of the industry instead of everybody doing it on their own. And last but not least, we're at one single place. So the Cdn Alliance is there for the industry, and we are able to bring everybody together in one single place to get this all done. So how are we going to do this in terms of the way forward? I mean, like I said, you can talk about it, but in the end, you want to do something about it. So we launched a number of different initiatives on the sustainability side. So we want to connect with other partner organizations and institutions that we can help with our members of the industry to instead of reinventing the wheel, bring it together in one single place. We will launch discussion groups, study groups, work groups around sustainability topics. We will initiate, facilitate, and cooperate on sustainability events. The Cdn industry itself knows about sustainability, but they really don't know how to handle it. We really want to make sure that we get the evangelization and put all those capabilities in one single place for people to use. And we also will conduct research in terms of sustainability together with our members and with other organizations as well. And that's basically high level what we do on the Cdn Alliance side. If you want to know more, contribute, or don't want to chat about sustainability, just contact us. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Martin. Those of you who find Mark familiar, you will probably recognize him because he's also one of the co-hosts along with Tim Siglin of the Content Delivery Summit. I think Mark and I have been at more conferences together than I can think of anyone else. So I really appreciate that, Mark. And I'm really also all power to you for kicking off the Cdn Alliance. I think it's long overdue in the sector and a great initiative. So from the both personal point of view, CDS point of view, and from the Greening of Streaming point of view, I look forward to a long and healthy partnership promoting these activities with you. From two very new organizations, really, Greening of Streaming and Cdn Alliance being just a few days old, to a much more established organization in the sector, we have the Streaming Video Alliance. Now, hopefully we've got JT, the exec director here, to talk a little bit about what they've been up to. Well, I think it's fair to say both Mark and myself and Adam Curwin, our new exec director at Greening of Streaming, have on a number of occasions turned to JT for mentorship and advice because they're several years down the road and doing some great things. JT, are you out there?
I'm here. Unfortunately, my video is not playing nicely with Zoom, so you just get the standard stock photo.
That's cool. You still get your 5 minutes though. Over to you.
All right, cool. Yeah, so no slides, folks. I think we're all slided out as much as we are zoomed out. So I'm just going to chat a little bit about sort of who we are and what we're doing in terms of sustainability. So basically, thanks, Don, for the introduction. Really appreciate that. I'm Jason Thibault, the Executive Director of the Streaming Video Alliance. We are a global technology consortia. We bring member companies from across the ecosystem together to solve critical technical challenges to delivering high quality video at scale. That's the elevator pitch for the SVA, right? We're like SCUDI, we're like IETF, we're like W3C, we're like CTA. We're like all other standards definitions organizations, although we don't produce standards. That's because unfortunately or fortunately, the streaming video technology is moving super fast. Takes about 3 years to do a standard. By the time you do it, the technology's already moved past it. So we focus in on best practices, guidelines, specs, functional requirements. A lot of people know us for open caching. That is one of our primary working groups and one of our primary projects. But we do a lot of other stuff. We have, I think right now, 11 working groups that cover pretty much the gamut of the streaming video workflow. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about sustainability. So the question I think everyone asks is, can sustainability be a priority? And to be honest, I'm not sure, right? But it can definitely be a very important aspect of technological decisions within streaming architecture. So to put it bluntly, right, streaming businesses are in the business of making money. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but that's why they're there, right? It's not just to distribute content so that everybody can watch, it's to generate cash. But that ability to generate revenue is directly a result of happy viewers, right? We know that. So viewers are happy when streaming, quote unquote, just works, right? You sit down, you turn it on, boom, no problems. And honestly, they don't care how it's delivered, right? It doesn't matter if it's via satellite, it doesn't matter if it's via terrestrial, it doesn't matter if it's via streaming servers. But of course, we technologists argue about that a lot. They just want to watch it without interruption. That's buffering, 404s, crashes, players not working, et cetera, et cetera. So, you have to ask yourself kind of what results in streaming interruption? What causes that? Often it's an inability to scale. It's an inability to deliver to a multitude of devices. It's too few caches, really inefficient caches. There's lots of reasons, right? But you get the picture. Technology decisions make for bad streaming experiences, or they can, right? Poor decisions, not thinking far enough in advance can really create issues with the viewer experience and ultimately with quality of experience. So obviously then streaming businesses put a ton of effort into building out architectures that can do that. They can deliver high quality video experiences at scale. And that's, again, like what I said, what we focus on at the SVA. So the question is, how does that relate to sustainability? Well, the way I think about it, and the way I think our organization and our members are starting to think about it, is what if questions about sustainability were elevated as considerations for those technology decisions, right? So consider that. So imagine like an architectural decision for a reverse proxy, right? Say it's not solely based on performance. Let's say that one of the comparative data points is power consumption, right? So consider like one reverse proxy consumes 90% of the CPU versus another that consumes only 30%. But they both perform relatively the same. So maybe major response times are like 10 millisecond difference. That's not really noticeable to end users. And obviously latency adds up throughout the workflow, but 10 milliseconds is, not something that anybody's going to lose any sleep over. So perhaps the company thinking about or choosing or making a decision on that reverse proxy should consider choosing one that is a more sustainable option than just the one that performs better, when that performative data point is really not that much different. So my point here is that I believe that the Streaming Video Alliance can take an active role in promoting the inclusion of sustainability data points in streaming technology decisions. So here's a real world example for you. Our live streaming working group is currently doing a proof of concept in a lab that was put together by by Liberty Global. They are testing out the latency assumptions they made in a publication they put out. I think it was last year. It was best practices for reducing live stream latency. So, right, made a bunch of analysis, bunch of best practice optimization suggestions. So they're testing all of these in a lab environment. Well, what if like megabits per watt was a metric when considering the optimization? So let's say you had, for a specific piece of latency within the workflow, let's say you had 10 optimization options, and instead of just looking at them on one metric or one axis, you're including sustainability in there as well. So, you can obviously turn the dial on a technology component to make it perform better, right? So you can reduce latency through better performance, but is the reduction in latency worth the additional environmental impact? So I think that that's where the Alliance can really weigh in, is by including sustainability data points within these best practices or suggestions or proof of concepts that we're making, so that they become part of the conversation. And I mean, ultimately, I guess what I'm saying in this little short blip is that the SVA is committed to integrating sustainability metrics within our projects, right? I'm going to make that a commitment for our organization, because as an industry, I think we all agree we can't ignore the impact that all that increased streaming has on the environment, from power consumption to hardware recycling to carbon emissions. So we're going to work really closely with Dom and Greening of Streaming to provide our members a forum to talk about their sustainability efforts, as well as ensure that our working groups are making sustainability considerations a priority within their projects. And boom.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, JT. As I mentioned right at the beginning of the day, we only win if we all win in this particular issue.
Exactly.
So I deeply appreciate that input. So everyone, really, that has been one of the most mad speed dating things I've ever done at a conference. I really didn't think that we could have probably turned this into a full day's event rather than a 2-hour event. Tim, what do you make of it? Let's just wrap up for a few minutes here, Tim.
Yeah, no, I mean, in fact, that's sort of what we're driving toward, aren't we? When we do these larger groups down the line as paid members to try to make this a multi-hour as opposed to just a speed dating piece. I think there was really good information, and what I really appreciated was companies saying, oh yeah, we've got another competitor over here. In one case on that, Vimond and Blackbird, talking about the same thing, coming at it from two slightly different approaches. That's where we get the commonality, and that's where we can have those conversations about continuing to drive innovation while still having power consumption as a primary consideration.
I'm absolutely overloaded with information, and I'm also daunted by how I'm going to chop up and distribute the video. When you see this, everybody, going out on LinkedIn and on social, please refeed it, get more people involved in the conversation, because that's what this is all about at this stage. Before I hand to Adam to give us the formal close, I just want to highlight, if you haven't answered the poll question, please do. The most important thing that I'm taking away from the poll as it stands at the moment is nobody has said, I don't care about this issue and wonder what all the fuss is about. That's the most important thing. So I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have turned up if you were, but if that was your mindset. But this is great. It's clear that we need to develop discussion with you all to give you more information about what we're going to try and do. Partly as a members organization, we want you to get involved and to actually determine what we're going to do, because there's a myriad of issues. But I think at that point, I've done my founders bit. I've started fires around the industry. We're going to carry on talking about this at other events. We've got another content delivery summit coming up before the end of the year that Tim, myself, Mark, and inevitably JT will get dragged into to bring you all back to talk about CDN issues. But we're gonna, I think, well, there he is, the man of the moment. I'm gonna at this point formally hand the keys of Greening of Streaming to Adam, and he's gonna lead it forward. Be gentle with him. He doesn't know our industry well. Naive questions, but that's fine, because I don't understand anything about finance, so that's what he's for.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much. Thank you to all the speakers. It's really given us a lot to think about. Today is not about progressing the decision. It's about airing the new problems to everyone. So we're now going to stop recording and open the viewership to an informal question and answer session. Speakers will remain available to look through the questions that have been coming in throughout the chat, and it'll also be a chance to have a little bit of an informal network. So finally, I'd like to thank you all for attending. It's becoming a really significant issue, and I invite you all to sign up as founder members of Greening of Streaming. Those of you who apply for membership before the end of this month will be able to call yourselves founder members for as long as you continue to be so, and use this term whenever you use our logo. Thereafter, full members will be able to sign up, of course, in the same way, but will not be founder members. So if we sign up, our next event is a members only meeting on the 6th of October, and we'll be discussing the working groups and plan the initial workflows, and of course discuss the parliamentary launch in December. I thank you again and look forward to hearing from anyone that wants more information and more details, and look forward to hearing from you. And with that, I'll pass you back to Dom.
Okay, so that's perfect, Adam. Thanks very much. I'm going to just unclick the spotlight button there and get the video back. So at this point, we're going to stop the recording, but I'm going to ask you all to stick around, and we're going to liven up mics and go for a little bit of Zoom serendipity, just because we can't hang out at the beach, which would be my normal location at this time of year. So thank you very much, all the participants and all the contributors to today, and we look forward to seeing you at members meetings, or maybe in December at Parliament. And with that, we'll formally switch over.